Welcome, everybody, to the UnDisrupted podcast with Adam and Carl. Adam, I'm wondering, there's this whole debate going out there about STEAM or STEM, and why is this even a thing? What's your take on this? Is there a right one? Then I've heard like people throw an R on the end of it. It just becomes a longer thing. It's STREAM now.
Yeah, STREAM, yeah. I mean, you know what? Here's the problem. In education, we love our acronyms and our special sounding words. When
Yes, we
at
do.
the end of the day, it should just be good teaching, whatever it is, because I've yet to see anybody really hit the nail on the head. We spend a lot of money on a lot of programs and we just slap a label on it. I don't know. You know what? That just grinds my gears. I'm just tired of seeing all these names and labels. We just need to do some good teaching.
There we go. Get rid of the acronyms, man. Let's get rid of the alphabet soup, right? Think about all the organizations out there, all the names for our assessments, all the names for all the programs. Now there's like, then there's the models, there's the SAMR model, there's, then you have ARDs. Yes, it just continues to grow. So as we bring in our guest here, this is Randy Rodgers. He's the Director of Instructional Technology at Judson ISD, right down the road from me, actually. And you can follow him on Twitter at RRODGERS, R Rodgers. Randy, what's your take on this idea of STEAM for STEM? I know that we've gone back a long ways, and so I know you have quite a bit of thoughts around this STEAM STEM and just about everything in between.
I honestly, I'm not married to either of them. The acronyms don't offend me as much as some of the other things like, calling people rock stars and
edgy celebrities.
Yeah, that kind of gets under my skin. But I would say I am affectionate. I do have some affection for the STEAM versus STEM, just because I think the emphasis is on within the scientific process. So it's the same way in STEM, is on creative thinking,
Mm-hmm.
problem solving, things like that. And I think art is all about that. I'm a big fan of Ken Robinson, and I don't think he would just advocate for, he's one of my leaders. I don't think he would just advocate for STEM. I think the arts are super important. As far as incorporating everything else, STREAM or SPLEEN or whatever, I don't know what all they are, but I think sometimes people just feel left out, to be quite honest with you. I don't think anybody's ever going to forget, we're supposed to teach kids reading, but yeah. I definitely think the computer sciences and the arts and things like that a lot of times get kind of the short end of the stick when it comes to critical curriculum decisions and stuff like that.
So Randy, so with that, what are your thoughts when you have a school that has like a STEM or STEAM or STREAM block? So it's like, okay, guys, now it's STEM time, now it's STREAM time, now it's SPLEEN time.
Gotta get that PE in there. Yeah.
My knee-jerk reaction is that I don't like it because I don't like the isolation of it. I'm a big fan of, my dream is to work in a pure inquiry or project-based learning environment. Mm-hmm. And in those types of environments, you have interdisciplinary, everything is together. You don't have separate, the subject areas, we've been separating them for 130 years.
Yeah.
And it doesn't make sense because real life doesn't do that, with the exception of obviously some specific job skills and things like that. But just how we interact with the world is not like that. And
they're separate but equal.
Uh-oh.
What's that? Separate but equal, yeah.
They're separate but equal, right?
No, that's not true. They're separate but unequal. If they're not tested, then of course they're not as important, are they?
Oh.
Yeah.
We're gonna get into that for sure here in a minute.
So, no, I'm not a big. I think they should be integrated. I think you should be practicing your reading, teaching reading skills. I think you should be doing your math skills. Math obviously goes hand in hand with STEM. Perfect or STEAM. Obviously, since it's the M in there. But so does social studies. There's so many different things you can study related to engineering and design as you go through history and how that's changed. Anyway, yeah. So does that answer your question? I hope it does. I don't like these little. Let's give it a day. It's kind of like Genius Hour. I'm not a big fan of Genius Hour, and I know I'm probably offending some people when I say that, but I think it's because you're just giving it an hour a week,
right?
As opposed to giving kids extended time during the schooling process as we do it to solve problems, to work independently, to work on things that interest them, to be creative and stuff like that. And we tend to just throw something at it and say, good, we got that covered. And I think that's what that does.
Yeah, and if an hour isn't enough, so then we have a week of coding, right? That's it, or the month of code, and then
Yeah.
it becomes the year
Yes.
of code or the lifetime of code. You know, we'll figure out that time frame. So we always like to ask also what I call our serious, not so serious question. So my not so serious question for you is this, and that is, what inspires you to write all those amazing country western songs?
Well, you know,
Randy Rodgers is well known around these parts.
my father's name, Carl, my father inspired me because my father's actual name, and I'm saying this on a podcast I know is going to be a global phenomenon. My father's actual name is Roy Rodgers.
Really?
What?
So it's just in my blood, as you can imagine.
Okay. It just comes naturally then. That's that inspired spinoff. Of course, you know, coming from someone with the last name Hooker, I don't have much room to poke holes in anybody's name. It's quite all right. Adam, you want to get him kicked off with the next one?
I'm still trying to get it all together after that one.
Yeah, I was not ready for that direction, by the way. But thank you, Randy, for that. Now I feel like we have a whole nother podcast that we're just gonna have to dedicate just to get dissecting that.
So one thing we like asking folks who sit in our seats, with everything going on in the world, you know, whether you're talking about COVID, whether you're talking about the new awakening to social justice that people are having, or just the day in, day out of our jobs, what is that one thing that keeps you up at night when you think, what could go wrong in my job, in my profession? What is that one thing that keeps you up at night?
Okay, I don't really think. I guess I don't think in those terms, like if this goes wrong. I tend to. Doesn't mean I don't sometimes come back and go, "Oh, what was that?" But I don't tend to think that way. I think more like something that has really come to motivate me the last several years, particularly in the community I work in, is just, am I giving everybody an equal opportunity to reach their potential, you know, to know what's possible. That's, to me, that's sort of become my why, is making sure that kids that I work with and come into contact with in my district have the same opportunities as any kids anywhere in the world, in terms of they can use the tools, they can use the technologies, they can experience, you know, the places and the people and the events, whether it's virtually or for real, that at least let them know what's possible. You know, and because a lot of times, particularly kids who are from poorer communities or maybe marginalized communities, their worldview is small. Just because they've had limited experiences, and their potential's not. Their potential's huge.
Right.
Right. And so that's the thing that I always want to ensure that wherever I'm working, we're providing the experiences that sort of expand kids' ideas of what the world is, who they are, and what's possible. And if we're not achieving that, then I need to be doing something else.
Well, and speaking of those opportunities, we have a big one coming in the fall of 2020. And what does that look like? And I know that, you know, you're in the middle of starting your new position there, so you may not know what the plans are for Judson, but in general, what have you heard? Like, what kind of scenarios are out there for how school might look? And again, this could air right when that's launching, so we'll see what's happened by then. But, you know, what does that look like as this moment on July 1? What would you say is like, you know, what kind of scenarios have you heard for terms of like how we're going to get kids back in school?
Yeah, I'm probably the same thing most people are. I'm hearing a lot of different scenarios where it's either, you know, they'll have the option of either going in person or doing it online or some sort of hybrid. And the hybrid, for example, that we've talked about in Judson is to do like a Monday, Tuesday block, then a deep cleaning day, and then a Thursday, Friday block, right? That's the hybrid.
Interesting.
Model. And then the other 3 days of the week, they're online. That's just as one example. I know in Seguin, we looked at just a wide range. I think the reality is, Carl and Adam, I think if you look at Texas, Adam, you're in Georgia, am I remembering right?
Yep.
Yeah, and I'm not sure, I don't know what you guys' numbers look like, but in Texas yesterday, we had we blew away our record high. I mean,
Number
it was
one.
like over 1,200 something. No, that was just San Antonio had over 1,200.
Yep.
In San Antonio, just one town. Their rate went up by over 10%. The way things are going, I think the vast majority of our students are going to be online, at least for the time being. I think until we get an effective treatment and or a vaccine long term, but at least until we can demonstrate, look, if you get this, you're going to be okay. Everybody, we've got a good recovery rate. I just can't. I can't see it being anything like normal. What the question I have is, and I've brought this up, and I can't buy it. I keep talking about it on Twitter and places. I'm not hearing any real satisfactory responses. Is how do you address these important programs like band and art and CTE programs like welding and auto shop and cosmetology and things like that? Those are going to be much more difficult to do from home.
Right.
A student isn't going to have an oxygen acetylene tank sitting in their garage. Well, they might, but I would be jealous.
They may have some Breaking Bad going on if they have all that at their house.
Yeah, maybe.
Chemistry, come on.
But you can't do all that virtually. You can't talk about it. You can't watch a video and learn how to make a perfect bead on a weld. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So our kids are going to, and this is what really, this kind of keeps me up even though I'm not responsible for it. I worry about what our kids are missing out on right now.
Yeah.
Because we can do a pretty effective job, I think, of teaching about the War of 1812 or the Magna Carta or something in an online discussion and video conferencing. But there's so much that we can't. And the relationships and the experiences, boy, that's tough. But I kind of chased a rabbit there. I'm sorry. I just hope I did sort of answer your question.
Oh, yeah.
No, and it's a complex puzzle too. And so just going to what you're saying, it doesn't, and I felt like when this got stripped back in the spring, all we did is like go to those core 4 areas. Like, all right, we can at least do this minimum quick little send that out there. So yeah, you're right. I mean, it's what that looks like in the fall is going to be completely different. Right.
Well, one thing I heard from somebody a couple of weeks ago in one of these it was actually a video conference, with people from around the country is that I thought was interesting is some school districts are looking at a model where their high school students, or maybe their 7th through 12th or 8th through 12th, are all going to be online only. And they're going to use that space in the high school buildings and whatever's in the middle school buildings to spread all their elementary kids out.
All right.
That's interesting.
And because they figure that high school, a 17-year-old could probably be more successful in an online environment. Mm-hmm. Right. And certainly it's easier on the families because you don't have to worry about childcare and things like that as much. That doesn't remove from me the sadness at what kids are missing and the concern for that. I know in Judson, we've talked about if you do the wholly online thing, we are still going to make it possible for you to like come after school and participate in activities and stuff like that. So that you're not missing on that socialization and, the opportunities to engage in fine arts and athletics and other things that are really meaningful. Hopefully esports this year.
Yeah. I know, like with all this going on, we've had to change our expectations of what school looks like. I know, of course, March, I know here in Georgia, we shut down, I think March 13th, it was a Friday, the 13th of all things. Mm-hmm. That's kind of when education changed. And we had to figure out what grading looked like, what was the expectations of the classroom going to look like. So as we are making this transition to the new normal, for those of you keeping score at home.
Ding, there's the first time you said it.
So as we are looking at, managing this new normal, how do you look at managing the staff and parent expectations and quality of the teaching and learning that's going to take place?
Well, and that's changed, Adam. I mean, I'm sure for y'all too. In the fall, in the spring, we were in maintenance mode.
Yeah.
In fact, teachers were kind of under orders because the kids were freaking out too, and their families, Lord knows what they were going through. They were kind of under orders. Look, we don't want them regressing, but don't pile new stuff on them.
Yeah.
For 3 months of the school year, nothing new or virtually nothing new. It was like we're reviewing the first semester. That's not going to fly this year. So it's going to be, our expectations are going to be completely different. One of the things that we've been working on, and I worked on it with Seguin, and I'm working on it with Judson, is what we expect from our online teachers. And I'll be frank too, and I enjoyed having this discussion with our curriculum director, is that we want the really good teachers to teach online, because we want them to do much more than that maintenance. We want them to actually have growth and engagement. And I look at it this way. I think it's a perfect opportunity to put in, for example, like project-based learning.
Yep.
Where students have much more independence. You give them a task or a question or a prompt, or even, heaven forbid, you let them come up with their own, but I'm getting too radical there. But
slow down.
Yeah, that sounds like SPLEEN.
Yeah.
Trademarking that right now.
Yeah. I want to see that T-shirt next week. Okay. But we've got a unique opportunity. You mentioned something really important about, how it's changed what classroom. This virus has the potential to seismically shift how we do things in the classroom, because I think teachers have, maybe some educators have been forced into a position where they realize how, I don't want to say unimportant, that sounds wrong, but how their importance in this age of information and readily available information on any topic and connections to any expert or any other people that know about, has made them their importance different. They don't have to be. I had this discussion online on a Twitter thing once recently, and I got flamed pretty hard. I was like, there's no need for a teacher to be a content expert.
Yep.
A teacher should be a learning expert. And I think one of the things that, a teacher can't possibly spill all their content into an online learning platform. The same teacher that might be tempted to stand up in front of a classroom and do that, right? So they're going to be providing resources and guidance and questions. I hope this is what I envision. But those, where maybe we'll come to a place in this, in how we operate in our pedagogy, where we do give the kids more freedom to explore different resources and take different paths to getting to the final answers that we want them to get to. We don't have to always have. It's funny because it's required here. It's required in every district I've worked in. The objectives written on the board. They have the answer written on the board. This is what at the end of class that you have to know. Well, then why do we have to go through all this rigmarole to get there? I've got it right there. All right. The rigmarole is good. All the stuff they go through is good, and we can let them have a lot more independence in that. I think it's a real positive in that sense. I think teachers will start to see their role differently. I hope they do. I know the really good ones will.
Yeah.
The other thing is, we want our online teachers this coming year to really ramp up what they're doing. It can't be maintenance. I've been working on creating a document that has like minimum expectations for what the teachers have to do. And some of it's what content needs to go on your LMS, but some of it is, the number of interactions you're having with students, the type of feedback you're giving them on assignments. Maybe it's the times you communicate with the parents, the types of different materials or the types of products kids can. But anyway, it's got to be real diverse. It's going to need to be higher level, more inquiry and project-based, and I think it's a really good opportunity for that.
Yeah, and I'll add too that you mentioned, we triaged that last little bit, right? And we already had built-in relationships from the first semester. We shut everything down on March 13th, and we were able to just kind of go forward. So kind of a follow-up to what you're saying, I like that idea that we do need to get deeper for sure, is now, teachers are going to be having students for the first time in their classes, but it may be virtually. So what are some ideas, or have you heard any ideas out there of how do you build those relationships? Like, how do teachers build those relationships with students when you're not actually physically in the room? Is it more Zoom meetings, or is it, how do you make those connections? Because I think part of what you're saying with project-based, of course, is pulling on their interests. So you have to learn that. So how do teachers do that? Have you heard any interesting ways to do that?
Oh, Carl, that's a great question. I've not heard anybody discussing it really. I think Zoom meetings are a start, but I also think, I've seen some teachers have really been, it's been touching watching some of the way teachers miss their kids.
Yeah.
And and seeing teachers do the parades or driving to each individual's kid house and, remotely, socially distanced, bringing them cookies or balloon or whatever, just to say how much I miss you. And that's about relationship building. And when you're starting your year off that way, you're going to have to try to be creative even more so to connect to those teachers. The students. I remember one of the best principals I've ever known before he was a middle school principal at the time. And before the school year started, he went to the home of every single incoming sixth grader. This is a principal, because he wanted to build that relationship before school even started, or at least put the foundation for it. And I think that was really powerful. It impacted me as an educator. I thought that was one of the coolest things I've ever seen a principal do. And he wasn't there to say, these are the school rules.
Yeah.
And he was there just to say, I'm the principal. Here's how you get a hold of me. I want to meet your kid. Let him know and how he reaches out, how he can get a hold of me if he needs anything, and such, and things like that. And I think teachers, one of the things they're going to need to be really present and available as much as they can. And I think it's real easy for us to get trapped into the, these are my office hours.
Yeah, right. It's a lot of
online, we'll do a hangout 3 times a week from 10 to 11 and whatever. And it's just like if they were in person, they would never be like that. I can imagine a teacher turning away a kid at the door who had a real crisis because it's not your period. Your period was second period, and this is fifth period. Yeah. So come back tomorrow at second period. Being present. I do think that the face-to-face stuff helps. I think we're going to have to reach out to kids with email, or if we've got district email, a lot of really meaningful feedback in the assignments as we're assessing those, or whatever work students are doing. Those things actually help build relationships too, and communicating with the parents regularly. And one of our requirements that on my draft of this is talk to the parents of each kid's minimum once each grading period. And that's a lot of work, but it's, I think it's important when you're not seeing the kids face to face, especially. But
yep.
Is that a few, nothing earth shattering there, but that's just something.
No, and it is a complex problem. That's why, and I haven't heard of many people talking about it either, which is why I brought it up. Because when you were talking about deeper learning, I was like, that's great. But before you get to, what is it? Was the one I saw, maybe it was Dean Sharesky who posted, like, is it Maslow's before Bloom's, right? So you got to build that foundation of relationship and trust.
Yeah,
before
but he's
a
hippie.
And he's Canadian, so we don't even.
That's right.
He's not even allowed.
Good Canadian.
We're not even allowed to go there, or vice versa anymore, anyway, right? So, we'll have to communicate virtually.
I also one thing that was kind of cool. The teacher was doing kind of a virtual one-on-one appointment with the kids. She was trying to set it up so she was going to have her Zoom or whatever it was on her phone and say hi, and walk around the classroom. This will be your seat, when class opens up, and this is how you do things. But it was a one-on-one where they had an appointment time with the family. So,
nice.
Once again, building that relationship early on, because you don't know, some of those kids who aren't in your classroom today may be there tomorrow. Right. Parents just don't feel comfortable today, but come October, they're like, okay, everything's died down. Now you go to school, or they're tired of having them around the house, which can happen. I know that happened for us.
I love that. It's beautiful and it's intentional. And that's the thing. We've all known teachers who their number one priority was relationships first. And I honestly, as a teacher, that's how I taught. I felt like if my kids knew how much I loved them, how much I wanted them to be there, then I didn't have the behavior problems. Yep. I didn't have the attendance problems. I didn't have a lot of the stress. And you get a different kind of stress because kids open up to you and they share the terrible things that are going on in their lives. Or maybe it's not even terrible. Maybe it's just dramatic, sixth grade drama or whatever that they open up to you. But those kind of teachers, there's, fortunately, I think there's more of those than not that put relationships first. And I think we'll see a lot of really powerful ways that teachers do stuff. That's a great story though, Adam. Thanks.
Yeah. So one thing, you kind of been hitting this throughout. We kind of like to end our podcast with our guests really giving people some words of encouragement because, hey, life gets you down. There's a lot of crazy things happening right now, that could disrupt what you're doing. So to keep people from becoming disrupted, undisrupted, if you will.
Better. Yeah.
What would be some words of encouragement that you would give someone who has listened and clicked that subscribe button to this podcast?
It's weird. We miss our kids. We miss our classrooms. We miss our colleagues. But we still work in, I guess my only words of encouragement are we still work in the most impactful field with the best clientele in the entire world. And one of the things teachers I think have always been really good at is making the best of it. Best of, unreasonable expectations related to test scores or limited resources and budgets, old buildings, maybe with the air conditioning not being reliable and textbooks falling apart and, the smell of a dead raccoon in their room on some mornings. I mean, all of these are, we all know about that, but ultimately at the end of the day, there's that kid.
Yeah.
And that kid may be sitting in the room present with us, or they may be at home, but they're still our responsibility. They're still our, what we've been trained for. And it's still a privilege and an honor to get to work with them. And we will find a way, to make this as successful as possible. People are going to still struggle. I would, there's no doubt, because we've had 3 months. I've been teaching, I've been in education for 29 years. 3 months out of that is not very long.
Right.
So there's still going to be a lot of learning to do. But, we keep telling our kids the last several years, hey, failure is good, right? Learn from failure. Well, if you really truly believe that, this is your chance to prove it. Be willing to take risks, do whatever's best you feel is best for your kids, no matter how crazy it sounds, and make the most of it. And just like I said, remember that client of ours and how amazing and precious they are. So, too cheesy?
No. I think that's right. That's right from the heart, and that's what we're looking for, and that's what people out there need to hear too. I think it's always going back to that kid. What's the purpose of all of this? Our customer, right, is those students. Mm-hmm. So, Randy, where can folks out there find you and your good work? Where should we follow you?
Honestly, I spend most of my time on Twitter at R. Rodgers. I believe you mentioned that. Rodgers with a D. You don't want to end up with that country singer, that aforementioned country singer. Well, maybe you do.
He gets a lot of your tweets, yeah.
I don't know what his handle is at all, but mine is just RRODGERS. Or I also have a blog at mossfreestone.com, although there's been some DNS issues with that lately that it's complicated. It's complicated. Of course. It's mossfreestone.com. And I do have a podcast, but you can see links to that on the blog. So, and I podcast all of about every 2 months. So.
Nice.
Not religious about it.
Sweet.
Well, thank you for joining us today, and I hope that everything goes well with your new position and new start to the school year.
Mm-hmm.
I appreciate that. It's good to see you guys. I miss seeing y'all in person.
I know. No. One day we'll do this live. So, all right, everybody. Well, this has been the Undisrupted podcast. He's Adam.
And he's Carl.
I'm Randy.
And he's Randy.
And remember, we're better together.
And we are better undisrupted. This podcast is made possible by the generous support of Amazon Web Services.